You spent your whole career in Connecticut. I wonder what this off season is like as you get ready to play with Unrivaled, but also know that this summer could look different for you. Just any thoughts you have on that?
I'm focused on Unrivaled right now. It's like I said, it's been a cool experience so far. With all, the athletic training, the weight room. They literally have everything you could possibly need here, which, we don't really have a lot of those things in Connecticut. So, for me, it's just been trying to absorb as much knowledge as I can and take care of my body leading up into that season as well.
Ah, this is one of my favorite times of year. So glad you're here with me, Terrika Foster-Brasby, to discuss WNBA free agency. Last week, during Unrivaled media availability, which a number of top WNBA players are participating in, we got kind of snippets and bits of WNBA free agency news or thoughts on what some of these players may be thinking. And one of those came from Alyssa Thomas, who we just heard from. And as soon as she said it, Terrika, I thought of you because I was like, oh, I want to know what Terrika thinks of this. Because Alyssa, I don't know her that well. You cover the Connecticut Sun, so you probably have a better grasp on her. But I thought these comments were interesting that she said. I'm focused on Unrivaled right now. They have everything you possibly need here. They don't really have a lot of those things in Connecticut. I've been trying to absorb as much knowledge as I can.
Listen here.
They don't really have a lot of those things in Connecticut. That really stood out to me, Terrika, when she said that.
You could probably also tie that into last season when there was a conversation about Connecticut not being able to get adequate practice time in because the facility had to be shared with a birthday party, right? Let's also add in the fact that Alyssa Thomas had the ability to spend the entire, or I won't say the entire, but a good portion of the summer with a lot of other players playing in the Olympics who play for Phoenix. And what does Phoenix have? A good brand new facility. Playing with folks with the Aces. And what does Aces have? A nice practice facility. Playing with folks who play for Seattle. And what does Seattle have? A very good, nice, updated practice facility. What is Chicago supposedly building? A brand new practice facility. So it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that one of the things that is incredibly important to Alyssa Thomas, especially someone like her who has a history of coming back from an Achilles tear, she's got issues with her shoulders, being able to be in great health is going to be important. And while I know for sure that they have an amazing training staff in Connecticut, facilities matter. And for someone like Alyssa Thomas, facilities matter. For someone like a Dewana Bonner, who's getting up there, who wants to continue to play, but needs to be in good shape, facilities matter. And so there has been conversation that I've heard that Connecticut understands that facilities is something that has been a concern for their players. But the truth is, I have no idea if there is anything actually in the works to adjust that. And if there is, it certainly won't happen this year.
Right. So, with that in mind, I have to ask, what's your hunch? What's your gut telling you? Because everything starts and ends in Connecticut with AT.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Dewana Bonner, also an unrestricted free agent, right? You have Bree Jones, sorry. Yes, so sorry. Not Chicago. We're talking about Connecticut. Bree Jones, who also is a free agent. And I mean, there could be wholesale changes in Connecticut. They hired a new coach.
Yep.
And some tend to think that with this coach, connections to Emma Meeseman overseas, that maybe
could be
they're going in a different direction potentially. I guess it would depend on these free agency talks, but will this Connecticut team look like the team we knew for the last few years? Will it look wholesale, completely different? partial change? What is your gut telling you?
You know what? My gut has betrayed me many times over the last few years as it relates to free agency and off-season changes. And so this may be the one year where I genuinely don't have a clue. I feel like there is a strong sense of wanting to be able to bring them back for another year. One of the things that I think is important to note is that Alyssa Thomas can still be cored. Brianna Jones, however, and DeWanna Bonner are ineligible to be cored. And while Dejanay Carrington is a restricted free agent, Marina Mabrey is also still someone under contract with them. So, there are some options available for them, but one thing we just have not been clear on is whether or not Alyssa wants to stay, and that's going to be the biggest part. So yeah, Connecticut has the ability to core her, and if they do core her, then they can pretty much get that clarity as to what it is she wants to do. You certainly don't want to let Alyssa Thomas hit the market. There are way too many options out there that would love for Alyssa Thomas is the kind of player that you hate to have to play against, but you absolutely want on your team. And you don't want to let her go for nothing. I also think it's fair that I think most of us assume that DeWanna and Alyssa are going to be a package deal. While I don't necessarily buy that that's the case, I think there are some options in which, one person can play somewhere and another person can play somewhere else. But I think that's the consensus around this conversation, that they might be a package deal. So you also have to consider that, what's going to be best personally for the family, for things of that nature. And so it's a very complicated situation. But if Alyssa does decide that she does not want to come back to Connecticut, that completely shifts the dynamic of this team. Now, head coach Rashid Mezian is going to have his introductory press conference later on this week. So I think we'll get an opportunity to kind of hear from him what he believes the direction of this team to be. But it certainly feels like no matter what you're doing or where you are, your focus absolutely has to be on trying to lure Alyssa Thomas back to this team. Otherwise, this rebuild may be very interesting. You already lost head coach Stephanie White. You can't really afford to lose your core for this team. Connecticut fans will not be happy about that.
Again, we were talking about the Las Vegas Aces earlier, and I keep saying, I can't imagine them looking different, and I can't imagine Connecticut looking different. I know changes get made, and look, these players, another word that we heard a lot during the Unrivaled media availabilities, we're getting the things that we deserve. Countless players. Yeah. You heard the deserve language so many times. And so I think it's really important that, teams really start to hear this. And I think they're pressing the issue. Maybe Alyssa won't leave, but she wants to put the pressure on Connecticut. Because you're right. Unlike Chicago, we haven't heard any announcements from them about facilities coming or anything, and they need to get with it. They have one of the premier teams in the league. Yeah. They've been in the postseason countless times already. They need to step it up there.
I will say this though, to end on at least the last thing I'll say. I think that the one thing that we should have learned over the last few years though is that you cannot doubt Connecticut. And while it may look different or whatever it is as it relates to the facilities part, when we talk about on the court, there was a question mark of what this Connecticut team would look like during the pandemic. And we saw at that point, DeWanna Bonner was a difference maker. There was a question mark of what this team would look like once they lost Jonquel Jones, and they didn't lose a step. They maintained their position as a premier team in this league. So I think that when you have the most improved player in Dejanay Carrington, when you have a core, a general manager who is now Morgan Tuck, who wants to continue. First of all, she's a former WNBA player. She's a former champion, both WNBA championship and a champion at UConn. So she understands what it takes to win in this league. She has the support. I think that it would be a little unfair for us to say that different necessarily means bad. So while, yes, this Connecticut team could look different if Alyssa Thomas and DeWanna and that core decides to leave, I'm not going to say that necessarily means they won't be competitive, because they have absolutely shown us that they can make something when most people think that they have nothing.
Okay. Well, I'll be interested to see.
Me
and
too,
you'll
girl.
be there on the ground. So
me too, girl.